Let's talk about objections. And this is so important because if you get this wrong, all the time and effort and money you put in to bringing patients to the practice, to diagnosing, to presenting treatment, that all gets thrown out the window. Because if you can't handle the objections, then the patients still say no. They still say they want to think about it. They still go home to talk to their wife, and you don't close the case. So let's fix that. So for those of you who are familiar with the objection flowchart, we need to look at a very important element today, that being the 3 E's. So as you know, anytime the patient gives you an objection to one of your destinations, financing, deposit, or patient decision, that being yes or no, instead, when they try to sell you an objection, like, I want to think about it, I need to talk to my spouse, I want to do this at a later time, the first thing we always do is the 3 E's, right? Now, why do we need to do this? Because when the patient is giving us an objection, the chances that they're emotional is high. We need to bring down that emotion so they can start thinking logically again about the treatment and about the money so that we can get them to have a conversation about one of our outcomes. Okay, so how do we do the 3 E's? That's what we're going to dive into this video today. To lower the emotionality of your patient, we need to follow this process. The first E is echo, right? It is important, it is critical to prove to the patient beyond a shadow of a doubt that we heard them. And the reason is when people feel unheard, emotion increases, right? It's one of the biggest causes of argument is when someone feels like their side is not being heard and it's not being reflected back to them. Have you ever heard like two people just going at it? Like maybe they're even in a yelling contest with each other. Now, if you are a third party observer and you're just sitting back listening to it, you'll realize they're completely talking past each other. One person is saying A, B, and C, the other person is saying X, Y, and Z, and they completely miss each other. So imagine if one person says A, B, and C, and the other person says, okay, you're telling me A, B, and C. That conversation would de-escalate very, very quickly, which is why we need to do the echo here. Because if the patient's giving us an objection, they're probably feeling nervous and want us to leave them alone. So we want to diffuse that so they can feel more calm and open up to a conversation. So when a patient gives us an objection, we always echo it back. If they say the treatment is expensive, we let them know, I understand you think the treatment is expensive. If they tell us, I need to speak with my wife, then we let them know, okay, I understand you need to speak with your wife. If they say, I want to schedule this later, then we say, okay, I hear what you're saying. You want to schedule this later. Always using their exact words verbatim. Why is that? Because if you can give the patient's words back to them verbatim, like word for word, then you prove beyond all reasonable doubt that you absolutely heard them, right? A paraphrase can go off the rails if you say it wrong, but if you say their exact words back to them, you've shown them that you're listening. Now, one common objection that I get here when training this part is people say, well, that's not the way I normally talk to people. And that's absolutely right. Nothing in the 3 E's is a conversation that you're going to use with your friends at a coffee shop or with your family around the dinner table. This is specific conversation for a patient in emotional state that is rejecting treatment. So we're going to speak in an abnormal way because we're handling an abnormal situation. So first, echo. This stops things from getting more heated and starts the path of de-escalation so the patient can relax and open up their mind and have a conversation. So now that we've echoed, what do we do next? We want to encourage. And this is really key. We need to redirect the energy, the focus, the point of the conversation from whatever negative thing the patient was worried about to the positive thing that the patient is going to get. Why is this important? Because if we keep talking about the thing they don't like, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, it's too expensive. Why is it too expensive? Because I don't have enough money. Why do you not have enough money? Because of this, because of that bill. I have this debt to pay. And you go in circles like, okay, there's all this reason about money that's holding the patient back. We want the patient to forget about that. Imagine this scenario. You're watching a kid at a playground, maybe your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, your cousin, and this kid goes down the slide way too fast. Like, he is cooking it. He gets to the end of the slide, he tumbles, he cuts his knee, and starts crying, right? Now, you have two options at this point. You could go over to this kid and you could say, "Hey, stop crying. It's not so bad." Or you could say, "Hey, bud, the ice cream truck just pulled up. Let's go get your favorite flavor, strawberry." Now, which of those two options do you think has a better chance of stopping the kid from crying? Of course, the option where you tell him, "Hey, the ice cream truck is here. Let's go get some ice cream." Why is that? It's because you've now redirected his focus away from the pain to the pleasure. You have to do this with your patients too. Redirect them from the pain to the pleasure. So we do this with the encourage, right? So we're going to let them know. And I know that you want to have a beautiful smile. And I know you're really excited to finally eat the foods that you want. And I know you want to be proud of showing off your teeth. Right? We're always going to redirect to what the patient says they want, right? Affirming the reason that they showed up for treatment in the first place. Now, one thing that's critical to note here with the encourage is this word and. And is a very important word here, right? There are other conjunctions in the English language, right? There's but, however, and a few others. Those ones are the most common besides and. If you use those conjunctions, you end up negating your echo. So it's really important to use the word and rather than the word but, right? Notice the difference. I understand you want to talk to your wife, but don't you want to be proud of showing your teeth again? Notice how that puts those two ideas in conflict with each other. Instead, you can say, "I understand you want us to talk to your wife, and I know you want to finally enjoy being proud of your teeth again." Notice how the and makes those two ideas in agreement, right? We want to stack agreement to close the case. It puts these ideas in agreement so that the patient can move forward. Really important, this word and. Okay, now that we've done the encourage, it's time to ask an easy question. Now, the easy question has exactly one goal, and that goal is to get the patient to say the word yes. Now, I don't particularly care if you ask the patient, "Is the sky blue? Is the grass green? Is death and taxes assured?" Right? Whatever you ask the patient, if the answer is yes, perfect. Easy question. Now, obviously, I'm going to give you some examples that are not those questions, that are a little bit more subject matter relevant. But the point here is the easy question is designed to get a yes. Why is that? Because it does two things. Number one, it creates agreement. Again, we're trying to stack agreement here. We're getting the patient to agree with us about something. We started this conversation at odds. Let's start treatment. I want to think about it. Now we're agreeing about something. The second thing it does is it increases the patient's confidence. Whenever you're at school and the teacher asks a question and you know the answer, it's like that light bulb moment. You're like, "Oh yes, I know this one." You want to raise your hand. You're like, "Oh, I've got this." Even if you don't answer the question, it feels good to know the answer. That's why the easy question should be easy, so that the patient comes to the answer quickly. And then when they do that, they start to feel good. The whole point of the 3 E's is to take the patient from feeling bad and get them feeling good. So how do we do that? Here's an example of an easy question. You can ask the patient, "Would you like to have less pain in your mouth? Would you like to enjoy your smile again? Would you like to eat any food you want? Do you want to keep your teeth?" All of these are great examples of easy questions because the answer is always yes. Now, a really common mistake here is to ask the patient, "Would you like to get started today?" or some variation of that question. And that is the wrong question because immediately it reintroduces resistance into the conversation. The patient was just pumping the brakes about getting started today. Remember that. The point of the 3 E's is to lower emotionality, not to close the case, right? We have the rest of the entire objection process in order to close cases. Instead, we want to focus the 3 E's on its purpose, which is to lower the patient's emotional state to get them cool, calm, and collected. That way we can actually have the important conversation. So the easy question is always get a yes. Do you want to have less pain? Would you like to keep your teeth? Don't you want to eat that steak again? Right? Easy yes questions. So let's put it all together, right? Imagine you're speaking with the patient and you said, let's go ahead and get started with this treatment. And they tell you, I want to think about it. So the way you would respond is, okay, I understand that you want to think about it. And I know you're really excited to finally chew on the foods that you love once again. Easy question. Wouldn't you like to do that, right? Or don't you want to dig into a juicy steak? And the patient's going to say yes. So if you follow this process, you should notice your patient's tone change. They should relax. Maybe they sit a little bit lower in their chair. Maybe their body language loosens up a little bit. If not, easy. You just do the 3 E's again until your patient is more comfortable, right? Now, you're not going to say the exact same words, right? You have to create a different echo, a different encourage, a different easy question, right? And that's why role playing is important. If you think you can handle objections like a master without role playing, without practice, you're completely deluding yourself. You'll never get good at it and you'll keep losing patients. So make sure that you spend time practicing the 3 E's so that you can give different variations, because if the patient says, I want to think about it, you do the 3 E's, you say, hey, let's talk about the treatment and money again. How about we leave a deposit? And they say, actually, I need to talk to my wife. And you don't have the 3 E's memorized, if you don't have it role played, if you don't have it drilled, then you're going to fumble here and then the process breaks down. So it's really, really important to follow the process. If you enjoyed this training, if you found it useful, you can get the resources below linked in the description. I'll get you the PDF for both the 3 E's and for the objection handling flowchart, and I'll send that to your email so you can practice. Hopefully you got some value from this. If you spent the last 12 or so minutes with me here, make sure you implement. The only thing worse than you spending your time and not getting any results is you spending your time for nothing, right? I want you to actually change something. Even if it's not my exact process, do something different in your office today to improve how you're handling objections. That way you can help more patients, grow your practice, and get better together.